Good evening, everyone. I'm Kathy Hester, and welcome to my kitchen. Tonight, I'm going to be making a borscht, and we're still going to use the Duo Crisp Instant Pot that we've been working with all week. And you can still enter to win your very own, depending on where you're watching. If you're watching the replay or watching live, up, down, or to the sides, you will find all the links to do all the things, okay? So, first off, I would like to go ahead and say, if you want to see some other things about the Duo Crisp, this was gifted to me by Instant Pot to do some demos and a giveaway. Hi Linda, welcome. I see a few people are coming in. It took me a little while to do all the prep. We went out and came back in. That's why I'm starting a little bit later than I have been. So, one of my very favorite cookbooks in the whole world is the Moosewood cookbook that the cover is missing in even. And as you can tell from the stained cover, and maybe you can't, let's see if we can see it up a little bit better. Yeah, you can see all my stains on there. Hello, Joanne. I hope everybody's having a great day too. So we'll talk a little more about my relationship with this cookbook. So we're using this as a base because this is how I learned how to make borscht. We're going to do it differently. So one of the things you can see in today's live is that we're taking a recipe that does things way different and making it this way. So the way Molly Katzen does it is she cooks the potatoes and the beets, then adds it to a saute and things like that. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to start with our sauteed vegetables and herbs, then add the rest in and cook it on the pressure cooker setting. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Hey Cynthia, I know lots of people are going to have this cookbook. Also, and I got that one before this one, the Enchanted Broccoli Forest. I thought I'd bring that out too. It is in pieces. And in here it says, it was a gift from Mom and Dad, Christmas 1984. And probably some of you people watching weren't even born then. Craziness. So I'm going to water saute my onion. So I'm going to go ahead and go to saute, have it on high, and I'm going to add a little bit of water. Okay, we may end up adding a little bit more water. Because we're sauteing in water instead of oil, we don't need to wait for it to get hot. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and put, this was about a medium/large-ish onion that I just chopped up. And one of the things I love about the older cookbooks, and I'll let you guys see in there a little bit. Oh, I forgot. Now I know why it's so close. Because I was doing a demo earlier and I changed it. So let's go to camera effects. Let's zoom that out a little bit. Oh, look, now it's a more normal thing, isn't it? Let's go back in just a wee tiny bit. Okay. So since I'm going to use salt in this anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and add the salt to my onions. Sometimes it can kind of help get the water out a little bit. So she's calling for 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm probably going to use 1 and then I'll adjust it. If you don't use salt, do not feel pressured to put salt in this now. You can use your choice of salt substitute later on. So I figured we'd have a lot of time to talk while the onions were sauteing and we could kind of catch up on everything else. We want these to saute and make a lovely, lovely flavor profile. So other things that are going to go in this soup: cabbage, carrots, celery. I am using golden beets because that's what I have. If you've got candy cane beets or red beets, those are all okay, and some potatoes. I am never doing the exact measurements, and this is what I want you to think about. Borscht is a Russian soup made from basically little bits of things that people had left over, and somebody's babushka wasn't like, well, only got a cup of potatoes. Guess I can't do my borscht today because I'm shy half a cup. No, she threw that extra beet in there, right? So something like this, which I consider, I hate to call it peasant food, but it's more of like food of the people, right? Because it's when you don't have very much money and you can put things together. Almost every vegetable soup came from really humble beginnings and are all our favorites. And Joanne says she has a lot of her books too. It's how she learned how to cook veggies, exactly. And I think this book was, let's see when the first one was, 1977. And I love this because this is back, and Molly Katzen is an artist as well. So she did all, you know, all the little doodles and beautiful things in here that are so cool. And this is really, like now, I would say the 20 teens on up is more of cookbooks, color photos for every recipe. Back then, it was drawings. You know, even if there's toast or rarebit. Actually, let's look at some of this from overhead. That'll be even more fun. And let me not ruin what little bit of stableness this cookbook has. So let me wipe the water off. And I'll leave this kind of up here because it's just so cool. So, you know, all the little things. And actually, this is how I learned how to do things. You know, talked about the ingredients. Look at that beautiful line drawing of pantry. This is how I learned what things were, like a whisk and a wok. You know, I didn't have the fancy things. And just all these little drawings are so cool. The cream of asparagus. So you don't know what cream of asparagus looks like, but at that point, I probably only had asparagus a little bit. And just all these are just so endearing. And you can see the stains from this. This is where I learned how to make hot and sour soup. And so many other things. You know, I love soups, and this partly because of this, and partly living in New York and going to kosher dairy restaurants when I was vegetarian. Sorry, let me see if I can get that a little more in focus for you guys. There we go. But isn't it just kind of awesome? Look at that broccoli. It's just beautiful. So, and this is the little fancy Russian table, and actually I'm just going to set that aside so I won't lose it. And this was my first cold soup ever. And just so many neat things, like look how happy these guys are in the fruit soup. Vichyssoise. So many things. And a chilled borscht. And just soups and salads and loaves, and there's one page in here with tostadas. I'm pretty sure it's in moosewood and not the Enchanted Broccoli Forest. I used to have all of her cookbooks, all of them. And these are some desserts. And this cardamom coffee cake is to die for. And it would have to be veganized. And that's okay. All this can be veganized. Pumpkin pie. How to roll an egg roll in drawings. See, doesn't that make you feel funny when now you were probably like, well, I don't want to buy that cookbook. There's no pictures. Because you know what? We don't always need pictures. What we need is to have our imagination kind of like tickled and woken up a little bit. And gadu gadu is in here. Oops. And that a spicy Indonesian peanut dish. That's the first time I ever had a lot of these things. And it's just, it was magical. So you'd look at these ingredients and kind of try to imagine, ooh, I am missing some pieces out of this too. There's another piece and a cover probably somewhere in a box. And this is where the Hungarian mushroom soup that I love so much comes from. It's just a pretty amazing thing. Oh yeah, Kate, the coffee cake is crazy. And I'm sure I could go back and veganize it pretty easily. Now, these recipes, so this isn't even the new updated moosewood, which healthize things a little bit. So this was back when vegetarians ate lots of cheese and oil. like lots. So it's not quite, they're not all quite as light and healthy as some things. So they did lighten some of it up, and some of it was a little sad, and some of it worked out really well. And let's see what else. And Joanne, one of the things she likes about the old cookbooks is they worked with basic everyday food since vegan stuff didn't exist on grocery store shelves, and it's true. It was the first time I was like going to look for things like tofu or so many new things, because I became vegetarian when I was 18 years old, and this was my first cookbook. So I really learned about a lot of different kinds of food through here. And I think it was last year or this year, I finally Facebook messaged Molly Katzen and said, hey, oh, you know what I didn't do? You guys know, don't you? I didn't press the start button because it's got a start button on this one. So I'm just talking away and nothing's cooking. So just remember, I need to put a big thing here that goes, press the start button. But yeah, it was like simple foods and just like letting your imagination run about what these things would. And I remember I was on a very fixed budget back then because I was in college. And that sometimes making just one thing, because we had to buy all the spices and we were buying the spices at the grocery store, is it would take, I'd make one thing, and so buying the dill and the caraway would cost a lot. So that was something that happened, and just kind of getting things little by little, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the rest of the week, but it was well worth it. And Jackie says, I still have a couple of her books. I also watched her on PBS years ago. Ooh, I have not seen this. And she was one of Jackie's first introductions to vegetarianism. And in fact, she was many, many people's introduction to vegetarians and being vegetarian and eating more vegetables and trying things out of your comfort zone. And yeah, I just think she's a pretty cool, amazing person. And Kate Kelly, the author is Molly Katzen. So actually, I'll show you the other book that is also torn up. It's from 1984. I feel like I should be able to sell this for $1 bazillion. And I'll show you. This is how I learned how to make bread. And I think that, yeah. This is back when you knew what pages were good. I made bread and spilled things on this so many times, flour and whatnot. And the Enchanted Broccoli Farce was her second cookbook, but I had a lot of Molly Katzen cookbooks and Moosewood cookbooks. All the Moosewood cookbooks are not by Molly Katzen, but like pierogies, homemade graham crackers, lemon yogurt muffins. Yeah, I'm trying to see what else is from me. Oh, and all the shapes of the rolls. That was very exciting. And again, it's still just more of the drawings. And it's just such a lovely idea of a cookbook. And I have a few others that are still from this time. And like there's a beet salad, and in fact I should probably make that beet salad. And what I would do, instead of using hard-boiled eggs, is I would use kala namak salt to give it that hard-boiled egg taste, but yet not have any eggs in it at all. Oh yeah, no, and these are, I actually, when I was in graduate school, I made different breads and rolls and sold them in some health food stores. And it's all because of Molly Katzen that I was able to eat in grad school, learned how to cook in in undergrad, and probably do what I do now. So I have much thanks and respect to her. Alrighty. And so in case, I know most of you have been with me throughout this whole process, but so this Duo Crisp is an air fryer Instant Pot combo, and over here you're seeing some different things. That's where the air fryer lid plugs in when we're using that. If you want to see that in use, yesterday I made cauliflower po' boys in the air fryer part. And so what happens is no water goes into this, but you still use the stainless steel pan, and you can do 1 or 2 layers in here of your food that you want to air fry. Goes in there. Oh, heavy lid. And then instead of this is the pressure cooker lid. It has 2 lids, but it has 1 plug. You put this guy on. See, this looks a lot like the old-timey coils on the top of an electric stove. And there's a fan, so when this gets connected, that's how it does its air frying. Now, it's not going to do a family size amount of French fries, but it will do 2 poor boys worth of cauliflower. So I think if you're going to do an air fry combo, you need to know that the air frying you're going to do is going to be in smaller batches, which is not necessarily that bad, really. It just depends on how big your family is. If you're even though there's an 8-quart one of this and this is the 6-quart, air frying wise, that's not going to change the game that much. Oh yes, Jackie says my other vegetarian book I read a lot was Laurel's Kitchen. I love Laurel's Kitchen, and that's how I learned how to make bagels. That was really exciting. I'm pretty sure it was bagels. And I also made 2 of the worst loaves of bread I've ever made, because you have that learning curve, right? So the first I made at my mom's house, and then that's how I realized white flour can get too old, because I actually researched it many years later once the intranets were around, because I spent all day making this loaf and it was hollow, like hollow. And it was because there was some kind of bacteria. But my mom's flour was probably 8 years old. You know, it's not like it was just like, oh, a smidge over. And then I made a whole grain loaf, and I didn't knead it long enough, and it was super heavy and stodgy, and oh, let me turn on my fan. Super heavy and stodgy, and honestly, that was back when I said we were on a tight grocery budget, so I had to eat that. I had no choice, and I had peanut butter to spread on it. So, you know, it was what it was, and it fed me. And that was really good. So I can say that. It fed me and it was good. And these are starting to cook up nice. And so what we want to do is get this to be transparent, translucent, because now you can see a lot of kind of solid white in there. Yeah, Laurel's Kitchen, and there are a couple others. I'll see if I can go back. Some of these are still packed up because I don't use them that often. And I have some of my own variations of borscht. They're just slow cooker recipes. So I thought, why not start here and see what we're doing? Now, one of the things Molly's recipe calls for optionally that I've never used is a tablespoon of raisins. Has anybody else used raisins in borscht? Because I would be really interested in knowing that. Yeah, and Joanne says she has a lot from the Moosewood Collective. And there's a book called Sundays at Moosewood. And there's lots of different international dishes. So, like, there's some really good African food. There's, oh, I can't even remember all of it. I cooked out of it a lot when I lived in Brooklyn a very long time ago. I was still in my 20s back then. And it was, yeah, but there's always such great ideas. And actually, when I was at Ben City Bargains, that big kind of Amazon closeout store, I actually found a Moosewood cookbook. They have cookbooks sometimes. And it was for cooking for a crowd, though, so it was like 20 to 40 people. And I just, in good conscience, couldn't rescue it. And I hope that someone else found it who needed it. So tell me what some of your other favorite cookbooks are. Old school is good, but if they're not all old school, that's okay too. Let me get this out of here. Yep. So that fly that was flying around, yeah. I'll just leave the rest to your imagination. We'll just cook it a little extra long. I never understand how the one like gnat in the room goes for my wine out of all the places everywhere. Aw, that's sweet, Joanne. Mine. She's saying my cookbooks. I'm trying to think of, whenever I'm trying to think of it, like for a while I remember, and this is when I was fairly poor, like really pretty poor, of like collecting all the vegetarian cookbooks, because there weren't, there was a time that you could, like, I love Nava Atlas's cookbooks too. And I remember, actually I was in St. Louis, Missouri in grad school, and I was going to make a pecan pie. I made a lot of pies there. And pecans were very expensive. At that point, I did not understand that in North Carolina, pecans were cheaper. And she had a recipe for a maple walnut pie. And I thought that was the most exotic thing I had ever heard of. And I made it, and it was delicious. And I loved also, I think it was, let me see if I can remember what cookbook it is. It's like Americana, I think. Let me go and check Nava's site. Vegetariana is what it is. And it is awesome. And there's all kinds of cool drawings. And also, probably not coincidentally, Nava Atlas is an artist as well in her own right, as well as an amazing vegan cookbook author. So I don't know if you guys have cooked a lot from her, but she is just the nicest person. And she gave us this really special book when Cheryl and I got married. And it still means the world to us. Let me let you see how this is. These are coming along. See how they're not as white, not as solid white. They're cooking down a little bit more. And Marilyn loved Laurel's Kitchen, yeah, and the bread book. Yeah, the bread book was the one I used the most. Lentil soup was a big deal then. That was, yeah, lentil soup. I'm trying to think of what else. I'm going to go ahead and throw in some caraway seeds. And we're going to start with what Molly says, which is a scant teaspoon. And that gives it this really unique flavor. So whenever I'm using seeds or spices, because the water is going to get down in a little bit, and then we're going to be able to toast these. And it'll really open up. It's already starting to smell good. And we can put in some black pepper later. Since Cheryl is not going to eat this because she's not a fan of beets, I'm going to go ahead and at least start with a ½ teaspoon finely ground black pepper. And a lot of times I do pepper and salt at the end to taste, and you can do that as well. And so again, what Molly had done is she cooked off the potatoes and the beets first in water in a separate pan. Then in the soup pot, she started doing this sauteing with the onions and butter and caraway seeds and salt. And looky there, she says until translucent. Wonder where I got that from. There's no joking, huh? Okay. Yeah, and I want you to see this so you can see how that's kind of coming away. And don't forget too, Saturday I'm going to be teaching a class, and again, the same place where there's links to, I'm going to go ahead and actually turn off the saute because it's still going to cook because everything's hot. And I'm going to cook it until some of the water's gone, just to try and get those caraway seeds toasted a little bit. Okay. All right. So I'm going to put in our carrots, cabbage, and celery. And you can cut it however you want. I cut things up a little bit extra. Like the potatoes could be larger than this, but I want it to kind of cook in, I don't know, a fairly fast amount of time because I just don't, I'm hungry. I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I want to eat. So we're going to go ahead and let that kind of get in there. Okay, we can put 4 cups of water in there. I'm actually going to get a little extra because I think I used a little more than I meant to when I was pouring in to saute. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit more in. I'm going to go ahead and put in, she's saying 1/4 teaspoon of dill weed, but quite honestly, I'm doing twice as much. I really like the dill in there. So I'm going to put that much dill in. We're going to make, what borscht is, if you haven't had it, it's like a sweet and sour cabbage beet soup. So we'll be adding a little bit of sweetener. I'm going to use maple syrup and some apple cider vinegar. I am also going to put just a hint, about 1/4 teaspoon of smoked paprika in here because I can't keep my hands to myself. I am not using bouillon, so I'm going to go ahead and add in a little nutritional yeast just to kind of give it a little more flavor. I could put in some bouillon cubes, but this is what I have on hand right now. So I'm putting about 2 teaspoons in, and I might put in a little more later. Okay, we've got that going. Let's put in our beets. I may need some more water, but we're going to add some, a cup of tomato puree too, so we may not need as much as I think. Chances are I was heavy-handed with the potatoes and the beets. Okay, that actually looks pretty daggone close. So I'm using these strained tomatoes that I didn't love. So I'm going to tell you that right now. Let me get this moved a little bit better. There we go. But they need to be used. I found them a little bit thin. If you didn't have strained tomatoes or something like that, what you could do is just put in some tomato paste and extra water. So it's an easy enough substitute. Okay, so this is about a cup of that. And give it, and you could even, I have used for sure diced tomatoes in this when that's what I had on hand. Even when I was following, if you could call it following this recipe, right? Poor Molly. She did all that hard work, and here I am just being like a crazy person and doing whatever I want to do. I feel you. It happens to me too. Okay, so let's see if I've missed anything. We've got onion, potato, beets, carrot, celery, cabbage, caraway, water, salt, pepper, dill weed. We could go ahead and put in some of the maple syrup and the cider vinegar. That's how she's doing it. So usually I would wait till the end. We're looking at a tablespoon plus a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. So maybe I'll just put the tablespoon in now. Oh, you know I can't stop there. Okay. Tablespoon and a teaspoon. And I just love the sweet and sour taste. Now, originally this recipe used honey, which is not vegan, as we all know. So I'm going to use maple syrup. Maple syrup is going to be a little bit of a stronger flavor. Let me smell. But it's going to work out just fine, and it's also going to be the same amount. A tablespoon and a teaspoon. Ooh, and a little more than a teaspoon. Because I poured like a crazy person. Now I tried to cut these beets up fairly small. Okay, so that's probably an average size of it. So I'm going to try just cooking it for about 12 minutes. So I'm going to move this around, and then I am also still going to taste it the way it is right now. Even though it's not all the flavors together, it'll still help me understand where I am. Yeah, I think I'm going to end up putting more of both the sweet and the sour elements. So we're going to put this on, and we are going to pressure cook it on high pressure for, I think we can do 10 minutes. I think it can happen. I'm going to press start so that it can start happening. And I see it, it's on. I did my job this time like I should have. We all cook that way, Joanne. I know. Sometimes I was talking to Nancy McDermott, who you guys don't know, although she wrote a vegetarian Thai cookbook that's really awesome if you can get a hold of it. I think it's out of print. And maybe we'll do a recipe out of hers soon, because I just really, and actually where is it? In the gluten-free vegan cooking in your Instant Pot, one of Nancy's recipes is in there. Actually, she made us a vegan green Thai curry. If I can find, there we go, 113. And the picture is on the next page, but I'll let you see that a little closer too. Yeah, there we go. And it's kind of cool because it's a green curry, but it's with sweet potatoes and mushrooms. So it's it's delectable. You make your own green curry paste instead of buying it. And hers uses jalapeno chilies, fresh cilantro, parsley if you can't get that, shallots or onion, ginger, garlic, cumin, coriander, just ground cumin, ground coriander, ground black pepper. And it sounds like it wouldn't make something as amazing as it does, but it makes a beautiful aromatic curry paste. And when you put that with coconut milk, it's like, wow, it's really, really good. But Nancy was telling me, I think it was it Nancy or someone else? I think it was, no, anyhow, it was now I'm second guessing myself, but I think it was Nancy who was saying she was typing out and printing out, no, it was Jill Newsonow, who, the veggie queen, who you guys all know. She's been doing pressure cooking for years and years, but like her first cookbook was before the intranets. And so to even send things out to get quotes for it, she had to go to a copy place, get copies printed, mail them off to let people see them to get things back. So when you think about all the legwork that went into those, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into a cookbook anyhow, but just the amount of mailing back and forth and all of that. And then, you know, people are like, well, those old books, they don't have any pictures. And it was like, I can't imagine how they could do all the things they can do now. Like now, I send mine giant files through Dropbox and they download them and they do their thing. If they need me to reshoot something, I can do it immediately in real time. But if you were doing this all through the mail and then sending slides or film and things like that, it's got to be crazy. Yeah, Marilyn and Jackie has all the Moosewood cookbooks too. Oh, that's so sweet. Jackie said she's working on her Kathy Hester collection, and I'm thank you. That's all I have to say to that. And Joanne says she has most of them, and in fact, she has most of them online and in print, which I very much appreciate you guys and your support more than you'll ever know. It means the world to me. And Jackie says similar to a chimichurri sauce before you add the coconut milk. And I know, and I've had people complain in cookbook reviews. So people will, sometimes it's just not the cookbook for you. So there are times I will buy a cookbook and I might be like, this is too much of a beginner cookbook for me. I'm glad it is there for the beginners. Or I am never going to do molecular gastronomy. I'm glad this cookbook exists. But instead, some people go, that's a terrible cookbook. It uses all these weird ingredients and it does these things. It's like, it's not for you. But someone was saying, she uses cumin in so many recipes. And it's like, but I'm using cumin in Mexican food. I'm using cumin in Indian food. You know, you're using cumin in Middle Eastern food. It's not just that one thing that you taste all the other things that go in with it. So herbs and spices are amazing, powerful tools in our arsenal, our little kitchen arsenal. Welcome, Susan. Better late than never. What we are making today. Hi, I'm Kathy Hester, and this is my kitchen, just so you feel like you made it for the beginning. We are making Instant Pot Borscht, which is a sweet and sour cabbage beet soup that has Slavic origins, and we are actually making it out of, well, a variation out of Molly Katzen's The Moosewood Cookbook. And we were talking about my great love for it and how it was my first vegetarian cookbook ever, and I just adore it. And Natalie says, when will you make the green curry? This month sounds amazing. Simple ingredients. Thai supplies are hard to find by us. Let me see how things are going, because I'm teaching a class this Saturday. So I'm teaching a Thanksgiving class. And then the Saturday after that, I'm teaching a vegan cheese class. And you guys can find out always about my classes at kathyhester.podia.com. But if you look somewhere, depending on where you're seeing this, I have links to the classes, and if you are suffering some financial hardships, if you want to get the bundle, which is both classes, so Kathy's Cooking Club is the best value. $50 a month, you're automatically signed up for classes. You can cut it off whenever you want through the Podia platform yourself, so you don't have to go, well, Kathy didn't email me back, or whatever. You can just go in there and go, okay, next time don't bill me for it, and just be done with it. But it does get you each class for $25 each. And sometimes, some months, there's bonuses that we do in the Kathy's Cooking Club Facebook group. And you can do each individual class is $35 each. Since the pandemic, I've brought the bundle back of 2 classes, and so you get them for $60, which is $10 off. So they're like $30 a class. So it's an in-between. And then I don't have a pay what you can on Podia. They just don't have that function. So I have it where you can pay the $60 for the bundle. You can pay $50, $25, or $10, depending on what you can afford. And I completely trust you to give from the heart what you can afford to give. If you pay more, it helps support some of the scholarship students that I have. It also helps me pay my bills, so I appreciate it very greatly. But if it's the matter of you not coming because you feel bad about paying $10, pay $10 and be there, because that's important to me too. You know, if that's going to fit in your budget, I'd love to have you there. If you can afford $25, that's great. If you want to be in Kathy's Club, that's awesome. It's all up to you. So those are, and I do 2 classes every single month. These are just like Facebook Lives. Like this week, since I'm really trying to demo and review this Duo Crisp, we've just been doing something in it every day. So sometimes I come on a lot, and then sometimes I won't come on for a month or so. So it's sporadic. Oh, great. It's Nancy McDermott has 8 books on Amazon, including Quick and Easy Thai. And just realize a lot of her books are not vegetarian or vegan. She's a wonderful person, and she cooks vegan for me. She is kind of the Southern pie and cake queen. She actually has a Southern cake book and a Southern pie book. And she is teaching, it may be this Saturday too, I'm not sure. But soon she is teaching an Apple Pie 101 class. Now, it probably, I don't even know, I didn't ask what she makes in her crust, but if she's using butter, you could use vegan butter. She may use Crisco, which is vegan and not whole foods, plant-based. So if you'd like to join her, she is delightful and very knowledgeable. She may not know all the vegan substitutes for you, so you can take her class and ask me too if you want. But if you can get a hold of a used copy of her Vegetarian Thai, There are going to be some eggs and dairy in there, but very little dairy. Honestly, I think it's in the Thai iced coffee, the condensed milk. So that's something to know too. Yeah, the vegetarian Thai cookbook is awesome. I actually found it. We were on vacation somewhere, and imagine this, I was at a thrift store, and I was like, oh my God, it's Nancy's cookbook! And I'm sure all the people thought I was crazy. And they were probably right. So, yeah, definitely try and get it. And Nancy is just, one of the things I love about Nancy is she is an amazing social justice advocate. So if that's not your thing, just close your ears if it is. If you follow her on Facebook or look her up, and she probably has a Facebook page, Nancy McDermott, and at least 5 nights a week, sometimes more, she actually does an anti-racist live where she does some readings and talks about news. She also then will do some cooking and things like that as well, but she's just a really, really good person. And so I know you guys like people who are really good people. And I can guarantee she's not going to use all kinds of meat and eggs and dairy. So just know that as a caveat. I can watch things like that and I'm okay, and then I just substitute in my head. But if you have issues with that and you'd rather only watch vegan people, I totally get that too. Okay. Okay, you guys, ask me some questions or something, because we don't even have, it's not even up to pressure yet. We got 12 minutes after that. So help me out. And I'll take a drink of water while I give you a minute to talk. Oh, I'm thirsty. Oh, and Jackie said she found coconut condensed milk that would be a substitute for regular sweetened condensed milk. I know, and I have some saved, and I think it's in the Ultimate Vegan Cookbook, not the one for your Instant Pot. Actually, here, I'll grab this. I made 7 layer bars with that stuff. If I can find them. I try to keep finding things in this. So this is a bunch of different cookbook authors from Page Street that we all came together on this. So let's see, is 7 with spelled out or not spelled out? I'm looking in the table of contents. Bars, 7 layer bars, $2.84. Yeah, I use a 7.4 ounce can of sweetened condensed coconut milk, shredded coconut, chocolate chips, pecans, flaxseed, coconut oil, salt, brown sugar, whole wheat pastry flour, pecans, and rolled oats. They are really, really good. They are obviously not sugar, oil, or salt-free in any shape or form. But they are kind of good. And I found that's the one dessert recipe that I finally had tried it a little bit to see how it was gonna react, and I thought it reacted really, really well. I used to be a huge fan of Vietnamese iced coffee. So they have like, it looks almost like a little mini espresso, something that you put on top of a glass. So typically what happens is there's ice below, and then you make a very strong coffee in this, and it drips down little by little, and in the bottom you put some condensed milk. So I actually have some for that. So that's going to be a treat. But you can use that sweetened condensed coconut milk in Thai iced tea or Thai iced coffee too. Oh, and Jackie also made 7 layer bars with it. Excellent. And Joanne's saying they carry it at Walmart. And Walmart is getting much more savvy about carrying vegan foods, gluten-free foods, and things like that, which is pretty awesome, really. Aha! Hi, Michelle. Michelle Lauren is in the house, and we are excited. Cheryl and I spent some time in Halloween on her Animal Crossing island. So she showed us around, had all kinds of cool things decorated. It's a game, if you don't know. And she said, would you just leave the tomatoes out for those of us who are reluctantly tomato-free, or would you sub anything? Honestly, it's a very light tomato flavor as it is, so I think you could leave it out. I might put a little extra nutritional yeast in, just to kind of give it a little umami flavor, because the tomatoes do a little umami flavor. And that's all I would do. You know, that really, so I think that would be good. And how are you doing? And welcome to the live. Michelle, do you have a favorite soup? Susan plays Animal Crossing. Well, I gotta tell, okay, I'm the worst at Animal Crossing. And Michelle and Cheryl both are like, you can't be bad at it. And I'm like, I have trouble going through the doors into the places. I think that counts as being a little bit bad. But we went to her island. So Cheryl is my sugar mama on my island. So what she does is she has a game and I have a game. So she flies over, uses her bank account, fixes me up. She paid off my mortgage and she bought me some stuff and brings me tools. I don't know what I'm doing. And then sometimes I'm like, ooh, I'm going to pick some pears. It kind of stresses me out. I know everybody else is relaxed because it's like you build things on this island and there's no time frame. But it's kind of like my type A comes out. So I either want all the weeds done or I want to get all the things I can sell at the store. So I just go on sometimes. But Michelle had everything Halloween. It was really pretty awesome. And Michelle said, I never put tomatoes in borscht anyway. And you know, every family's recipe is going to be a little bit different. And so, also, you know, I'm wondering a little bit is, in the Slavic country, I guess they would have put up tomatoes. But I'm just kind of thinking, when beets and cabbage and potatoes are all there and that's what you're using, maybe there wouldn't be any tomatoes around. They certainly, you know, if you can them, that would be fine. I wonder, does anybody know when people started canning food? Because that I don't know. I haven't done that kind of canning research, but Marilyn might know. And Susan says, oh boy, I know, right? And let's see. Oh, good. And Marilyn, will you put the name of that dehydration book? So Joanne ordered a dehydrating book on Marilyn's recommendation, and Marilyn is an amazing dehydrator. And that sounds like I made you into a machine, but what would you call it? Dehydrist? I don't know. But she is very creative and dehydrates so many more things than I would even think of. Go ahead. Ah, yay. And so you can see too, again, you can actually see that this pops up over where the opening is, which makes it a little easier to see. So again, since we're talking, in case you missed some of the other episodes of the Instant Pot Duo Crisp. And Michelle says Animal Crossing gets less stressful over time. You remember there used to be some Facebook game where you like farmed and grew vegetables? That used to make my blood pressure go up. So I think it's just me, maybe not the game, but every once in a while I'll go in. We'll see. Maybe I'll even go in tonight. I'm very tired today. It's been a very long day. I don't know about you guys. Oh, see, Marilyn does know. Napoleon used to feed troops in Russia. But do you know if they were canning anything yet? Because I'm like, there had to be some point where maybe they wouldn't, I know they would have been doing fermentation. So there must have been a time that went from fermentation to more like glass jar canning. Michelle didn't play that one. You would have had all the things. So whenever we went into any room, Michelle had 7 of everything. So it was educational. But she had things from the Haunted Mansion and stuff like that. So it was really fun. We did that after she took the Harry Potter class. I cleaned up some stuff, and then we sat down and actually had dessert and all played Animal Crossing together. It was very interesting. I just ran around and looked at stuff. I was like, this is exactly what my character was doing. Bumping into the door frames. I did a lot of that too. Mary Bell's Complete Dehydrator Cookbook is the dehydrator cookbook that Marilyn recommends. So, and Michelle says she normally hates those kind of games, but this one is different. And you know what? Cheryl loves it. So I am not trying to put down the game in any way, shape, or form. I think it's actually, it can be like a form of meditation or even like a therapeutic exit from, what is it now, like month 9 of us all hanging out in the same house and working and living together and not having a lot of space. Sometimes today, the more tired I get, the harder it is sometimes to not have that kind of break and that physical autonomy. But I know when Cheryl plays it for even just like 15 or 20 minutes before she goes to sleep, the next day her mood is significantly better. And I think that's kind of awesome. Oh, that's a good question. Linda asked Marilyn, do I have to blanch white or russet potatoes to dehydrate them? And Linda's getting confused by what she reads on Google, and I'm confused because I've never dehydrated potatoes. But what I would do is I would shred those puppies up and I would freeze them for hash browns for later. That would be what Kathy would do with potatoes. And Michelle says she bumps into real door frames. Usually I'm pretty good at the door frames in the real life. But it's like you have to keep moving your character this way. And I'm like always trying to pick up something. It's like, there's nothing there. Yes, it is. And then I feel like I'm 800 years old. Pick that up, right? And it is good pandemic socialization, Michelle. That's a great way to put it. And so I know one of the things that Michelle has been doing that you guys could do too is she's been actually inviting friends over, because you can fly on the airport to visit other people's islands once you know their codes and have been invited. So Michelle had a birthday party on her island this year. And I thought that was pretty awesome. She had party favors. I'm like, what kind of craziness is this? And Susan says Animal Crossing, she told her husband, that's what's keeping me sane right now. And I think that it's interesting because I think the game developers weren't really planning on the pandemic, and I think it really upped their thing. I know, because Cheryl, what is it? It's not PlayStation. What is it? Switch. The Nintendo Switch is what it's on. And then there's the Switch and the, what's the little one? Switch Lite. So we have both. So the Switch Lite, she could only get that because you couldn't get regular Switches when she wanted to start playing. It's very interesting. And I think that it is a really good outlet right now. Just to be somewhere different, because we're not really traveling the same way. You know, and as winter happens, with the numbers going up, don't know about you, but I'm probably going to start staying at home a little bit more. Usually we only do things that are outside or in that giant warehouse, so it's almost like being outside. But, you know, in case you need something for the winter, you might think about getting a Switch or a Switch Lite if you can, and see if you like the Animal Crossing game. And Joanne says, of course, if you're canning acidic vegetables, you don't need pressure, but many foods would not have been safely canned until they developed pressure cooking. Yeah, I'm thinking that water canning must have come before pressure canning anyhow, because I would think the pressure canning would have started, like, you know, in cannery factories and then become a home. I'm going to have to research this, and if anybody knows or knows of a good site to go look at this stuff, I'd be happy to go look it up and figure it out for us. I've never thought about it before now. Oh, okay. Marilyn says Napoleon offered 12,000 francs as an incentive to improve food preservation. Methods involved heating, boiling, and sealing foods in airtight glass jars. Ta-da! Marilyn wins again. That's awesome. Yeah, because the reason, like, we do it because it's nice. I mean, yes, we get some extra stuff, but like, I can go out and buy a can of diced tomatoes. there were times that was not really possible. So that's why I'm kind of curious about how that unfolded. And Susan says she has the switch light. I think that's kind of nice because that's one portable and you can take it wherever. So Cheryl couldn't just switch her profile onto the big switch, which is why I'm on the big switch. And that's why she comes on and plays for me, I think.
I didn't want to lose all my stuff.
Yeah, she didn't want to lose all her stuff because she has, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot, houses, and you get little plants and decorations and rugs and everything is in that, which is, again, why I get a little stressed. And Marilyn says, Linda, if you don't blanch potatoes before you dehydrate them, they will turn black. That is very interesting. So, Marilyn, do you shred or cut them up before you blanch them, or are you just blanching a big whole potato? Or I would think probably shredding it, then blanching it, then dehydrating it would speed up the time if you could do it like in the food processor. We've got 5 minutes. So, who wants to talk about soups? You got a favorite soup? You guys know the tricks of making cream of anything soup, right? I'm sorry, Michelle, I'm going to use tomatoes as an example, but you could use something else. Actually, let's do cream of butternut squash. We could take some butternut squash cubes, we could take some water, we could either saute some aromatics like some onion and garlic, and put that in there with either and or some rolled oats or cashews or a combination. So what you're doing is then by cooking that for a little while, when you puree everything together, it's like you're making it into milk. So it's kind of, you're making your own cream with it. It would be really awesome if you could put like a sprig of fresh rosemary in there. You'd cook it maybe 12 minutes, high pressure, and then take the rosemary out before you puree everything together. Then add some balsamic and some salt and pepper or a salt substitute. But you can do that with any kind of squash. You can do it with broccoli. You can do it with celery. Cream of celery soup is amazing. And Cheryl really hates the texture of celery. She hates the strings and biting into it. But if it's pureed really well, the flavor is amazing. And celeriac or celery root is also another delicious way to do that. And on Saturday, we're going to make a cauliflower celeriac soup for our Thanksgiving starter. And we'll do something very similar to make it super, super creamy. Yes, celery is yummy. Yep, a little bit of rolled oats goes a long way. I'm trying to think, because like, what else can we, because you can always you can make chunkier soups and you can put just about anything in there. The trick to a good soup, just like before, if you watch some of the older videos where I'm putting everything in the slow cooker and then I'm opening it up, so they're like two parts. You see the first part where I put everything in, then I come in at the evening and I open it up and re-season. That's imperative to a really good soup, and that's what we'll do here. Even from my preliminary little taste, I think there's probably not enough vinegar and maple syrup in there. And so we'll adjust that. We may also adjust the dill, nutritional yeast, and see if I add a little more smoked paprika, because it's my soup. It's not anybody else's, and I'm sure it's not very traditional. But it's delicious. You guys are hanging in there. So how's your week been? I know this week has just flown by. It seems like it should be like a Monday at 11 a.m. for me. And it's just been days and days and days. And Joanne said, use the oatmeal in the blender tomato soup. Yes, and I do that. So I have a hot blender, and they have a few. I think Cuisinart calls it a soup maker. So what it usually is a glass blender, and much like the air fryer lid fits in there, and gets the electricity, it's kind of like that. So you can't, even on the bottom of the blender, like if you're using your Vitamix, you can rinse the bottom off. You can't rinse the bottom of that because it goes into the electrical part. So it's a little harder to clean. But I love it because I just throw in a couple of tablespoons of oats, a tablespoon of cashews, a can or two of diced or crushed tomatoes. You could add some bouillon cubes in there, maybe add a little extra water, let it get warm, and then you blend it right in there, which is really cool. So I do love that, and I'll probably demo that again pretty soon. And Marilyn says you can slice, shred, dice, then blanch or steam. Strain and put into the ice water to cool. That's very interesting. I may have to. So what are you going for making your own like potato flakes to like make mashed potatoes or to put in potato rolls or something like that? Marilyn, tell us a little more about what you do with it. While I'll let the pressure off. Now, usually with a soup, I'm going to tell you to wait 10 minutes. But we can just press this a little bit. And that's one of the cool things about this. So it's very easy, and notice it's far away from where the steam comes out. If I press it hard, it will go all the way. I can probably do it real quick. And then I can push that real fast. But see how that's too fast? Because it's going to let out some liquid. We don't want too much liquid to come out. So we'll just kind of press it like this. Joanne says what she's been doing this week has been watching this crazy cooking vegan woman all week and going through hurricane warnings. How is it so far? Are things past? And you guys can watch me do this from this side too. If you don't have the fancy one and it's around here, you can use like a little wood handle to keep your hand away from it too. Smells like borscht. I haven't had borscht in a long time because Cheryl doesn't like it. Marilyn says she uses diced in soups, sliced in casseroles, and shredded for hash browns. Really? So with the hash browns then, do you because I'm thinking the slice, that would be like the old-timey au gratin potatoes in a box kind of thing. Obviously yours are better than that, but I know what those would look like. Diced, I see putting them in soups. I'm just seeing you having to maybe rehydrate the shreds. And maybe I'm wrong. And maybe that's why it takes mine so long. Let me come over here a little bit, so I'm not so much on the camera. Yeah, we all hope the worst is past you, Joanne. Jackie says that too. And when the pressure's really high and it's a soup, it takes a while. Even now, I'm probably just pushing it a quarter of the way. And Joanne says it's crossed the state to Jack's and is heading along the Atlantic coast and heading out to sea. We've had just a dark day, and it's been raining all day long. So I think that's what's making me feel kind of sleepy. I don't know who Max hears, but he feels very, very strongly about it. Oh, it's the fox. Cheryl says there's a fox outside. So behind there, we've got a deck that's kind of a second-story deck, and we look out over some woods. And so I think we heard the fox last night, in the middle of the night. I think he was not happy. This is why I usually just do natural pressure release, and I'm like, oh, listen for the pin to drop, and then I'll come and eat. But I want you guys to see this. And see, as soon as it starts splattering too much, I'm going to stop. But I'll push it as far as I can. This is the reason you don't want to just let it go full on, and just because it will spray places and it'll burn you because it's quite hot. Okay, so that locked it in. I'm going to give it a go. All I have to do is hit that to make it stop. So we'll see. So far, so good. But this is not a time that I would walk away. I would definitely stay here and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. Oh, I heard the first little hint of. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit. Try again. And what I'm watching is I'm watching this part here, how much liquid is coming out and how much is like staying on the vent steam release. And that gives me a good gauge. And Michelle says, borscht is good topped with vegan yogurt, but amazing with Kite Hill cucumber tzatziki. I've not had that. That sounds really good. That sounds perfect for a chilled borscht, actually. And I think I have some hemp sour cream in the fridge that I'm probably going to put on here. And I'm going to put extra dill on top. Oh, so good. And Marilyn says, barely cover shredded potatoes with warm water, then saute. Very similar to buying dry box shredded potatoes for hash browns, which I have never done before. But now I'm curious. I'm definitely curious. Oh, and Michelle uses the tzatziki on her hot borscht as well as her chilled borscht. But see, borscht is for all the times. There we go. Finally dropped. Let that go. I'm going to just move this over here for a minute. We're letting some of the steam come out so that you're going to be able to see. And there you go. So the test is going to be, are the potatoes and the beets soft enough? Because that's what I guessed at, right? And so this is how you can make other recipes into Instant Pot recipes. Whatever takes the longest. Yeah, see, there we go. That cut through really easy. Let me find. There's a piece of beet. Yeah. And the beet pierces nicely too. So I'm going to taste it. I love beet, you guys. Okay, I'm agreeing with Molly. We need a little more salt in there for me. If you only have like specialty salt substitutes, you could use a mixture of onion powder, garlic powder, probably equal amounts, and then a half to a quarter of ground celery seed, and mix all those together and use that as your own salt substitute. It's much cheaper. I'm going to put a little more pepper in there because I love pepper. I'm going to put a little more dill in there. Put about another quarter teaspoon to start off with. The caraway is perfect. I am also going to put another heaping tablespoon of nutritional yeast. Let's taste for that first. And usually I put nutritional yeast in last because it saves some of the properties of it, some of the nutritionalness. And sometimes, like this one, I'll put it in if I want to really have it make a broth for me. And usually I add it on both sides a little bit, okay? Now let's taste this again. Oh, that's much better. It's the perfect amount of pepper for me. It may not be for you, so taste it because I like a lot of pepper in my soups and my pasta. I'm probably going to put about a teaspoon more of both maple syrup and apple cider vinegar. I'd like it to be just a little more intense. And then we'll taste it one more time. And the reason mine isn't red is because I used golden beets, because that's what I had. My red beets, I waited just a little bit too long for them. And when the pandemic started, actually, I was cutting off the tops of my carrots and my beets and having them in a flat dish and getting them to bloom because it just made me feel like I got to be outside somehow by being in my kitchen. That's the sweet spot for me. So if you look at it, this is what the deliciousness looks like. And we've just got potatoes, there's some chopped up aromatics, some celery, some onions. There's potatoes, beets. What else we got in there? Some tomato puree that you could totally leave out. And if you're using red beets, you're going to have this beautiful, brilliant red color in there, which I think is really cool. And sometimes the potatoes soak all that up and it just looks really nice. Okay. And Jackie says dehydrated onions taste like fried green onions, the fried onions in the can, not fried green onions. I don't know where that came from. And Susan loves beets too. It is, yeah. And finally today, it didn't get above 65 degrees. So I think we're going to go into soup weather, and I feel confident that I can eat this every day for the next little while. And this freezes fine too. When you know you're not really supposed to freeze potatoes, but if it's just a small part in a soup, you can get away with it. The texture will be a little bit different, but it's not as much as if you just froze potato. So that's another thing. And Marilyn says, if you blanch the onions before dehydrating, they taste caramelized. You are just amazing, again. And Michelle says, all weather is soup weather. And I've got to agree with you there. I do love a bowl of soup. And I have some of my fancy gluten-free vegan crackers that may be part of this. Just whenever I eat borscht or certain soups, from living in New York, I would go to kosher dairy restaurants because I was a vegetarian then, and I could eat anything there. So at that point, that was crazy talk, right? That's like when we go to a vegan restaurant and you're like, I can have anything on this menu. How do you pick from so many things? But I remember having my little buttered bagel, my bowl of soup, and it was so cheap. And it was amazing. So that's what borscht reminds me of. And there is, just so you know, if you're going out to a restaurant, just because they have borscht, it doesn't mean that it's vegetarian or vegan. So you want to check for sure, because there are beefy borscht recipes as well. So know that. And Joanne says she loves the way I measure when I'm tweaking. Yeah, then I figure out, it's all whatever. I kind of know about. Okay, awesome. And Marilyn, thank you so much for all your awesome tips. I wish that you guys really were on the other side of this counter and I could dish us all up some bowls of borscht. And Michelle, if I knew you were coming, I wouldn't have put tomatoes in there, so you could have some too. So go have a lovely dinner, relax, and enjoy what's left of this beautiful autumn day. And be sure to go and enter to win a Duo Crisp of your own. That I'm going to be pulling a name tomorrow, and then I'll announce it. So I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow yet. I may be running around and not being at home because I've been on video pretty much all day, every day this week. So I'll come on at some point on Friday and let you guys know, even if I don't make some dinner, okay? And Joanne says, so do we. We wish we were there too. All right, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Please sign up for the Thanksgiving class on Saturday or the vegan cheese class the Saturday after that. I'd love to see your beautiful faces there. Have a great night. And Natalie, thank you so much. She says the soup looks delicious, and have a great weekend. The other thing, if you're not already on my free private Facebook group, Vegan Recipes Cooking with Kathy Hester, join there. And it's really simple to join the giveaway. You just have to follow Instant Pot, but I gave you some extra things that you can do for extra points, okay? All right, guys, have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you tomorrow.